Last week, Hazoor was discussing the issue of walaw taqawwala alaina baadh aqaweel.
Right.
Hazoor promised that he will
continue
this.
to speak on the same subject.
Yeah.
Now, I am also going to point at certain implication of this verse, which is very often ignored by people. A very important thing which I am going to bring to the focus of your attention. People believe, generally, that whenever anyone claims to be a prophet of God, it is the responsibility of all the people together to destroy him in every respect, to kill him if they can, to destroy his message, to trample upon all that he has attained and wipe it out from existence. This is the responsibility of the people whom somebody addresses as a messenger of God. And they believe that this is what God requires of us. The Holy Quran has a completely different view to this problem. The one reference I gave you earlier was with reference to the people of Pharaoh. When Moses, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, addressed them as a prophet of God, the same was the view of the people at that time. People, elders of the Pharaoh's people, got together and considered and consulted each other, drawing the conclusion that such a man whom we know to be false, they thought him to be false. That is the point. Here the judgment is completely in the hands of those who are addressed. But this is a very important issue. Even if we have to spend the whole hour explaining it, we better take it. Now, they also believe that it is a matter to be decided and executed by ourselves. And they saw somebody whom they thought was, an impostor, and whom they thought not only was an impostor, was delivering very important messages relating to the life and death of the people there, taking the Israelites away from him, leaving them helpless and powerless, without any labor which was so much needed by at that time by the pharaohs. Now this was a very grave matter. And they believed him to be a liar, there is no doubt about it. Now if you believe someone to be a liar who claims to be from God, what is your responsibility and what are your rights to do? This was the issue. They decided, because we know him to be a liar, it is our right to kill him and destroy him. While they were contemplating on this, one of their own people who had secretly believed in the truth of Moses approached them and addressed them as such. إِن يَكُ صَادِقًا إِن يَكُ كَاذِبًا فَعَلَيْهِ كَذِبُهُ وَإِن يَكُ صَادِقًا يُصِبْكُمْ بَعْضُ الَّذِي يَعِدُكُمْ. You are about to kill him because he is a liar? But what a beautiful expression. إِن يَكُ كَاذِبًا. He could be liar, he could not be. How could we know? God knows better whether he sent him or not. And he is the only person, only being rather, who could decide whether this person is attributing lies to him or not. So he said, the one who knows, he should act, not you. And if he is a liar, then the punishment of lies will not fall upon you, because you are not liars. He is lying, he confronts the danger of having God's wrath upon himself. So what is he to you? Why are you so excited about him? If he is a liar, how do you think has God gone mad that somebody lies to you and he destroys you and punishes you for the crime of somebody else. What a beautiful logic. You have nothing to fear. Just keep quiet and be calm and let God punish this man, if he's a liar. That is one part of his argument. And the second one is, remember this. Let's suppose, for the sake of argument, maybe he's right. And if he's right, then God's punishment will never leave you alone. It will come and follow you and pursue you to your end until God's word of warning, which He delivered to you, is fulfilled at last. Now, this is what stayed their hand of cruelty. This is what gave Moses another lease under God's divine will, of course, but he became instrumental in this. And he used this new lease of life for delivering a message till you know what happened in the end. So that is one thing. Now this verse implies the same thing. It fully supports that view. If he is a liar, you think he has concocted things, said things about us which we have not said. And how can you believe we will sit idle and not take any action? We are bound to take action, and we will not spare it. So he says, it's not, this verse conveys the message, which is the second part, very interesting. It is not for you to destroy him, it is for us. The liars are supported by people, not by God. So maybe you try to save him from our wrath. But we warn you that if all of you put together try to stand between him and me, you will not be able to obstruct the passage of my wrath. It's going to befall him and destroy him. What a beautiful argument. So complete, so logical. And I don't know how the present day Muslims or any other people in the world, it's not just Muslims alone, all people behave the same way to all the messengers of God, or those who claim to be the messengers of God. Now in the light of these two principles mentioned in the Holy Quran, with reference to Pharaoh's time and with reference to the time of Hadhrat Muhammad, let us examine the history of religion as traced and preserved by the most truthful of all books, the Holy Quran. The most reliable of all the books, because it still stands uninterpolated and unchanged. So the verdict of the Quran with regards to the history of religion is the most authentic and most reliable verdict. Now let's go back and study the case of those people who, according to the Quran, had made false claims. None of them is reported to be alone in making such a claim. It was Pharaoh who claimed to be God, and he was the full might of his army and his monarchy and all the state of power behind him. And where was Moses? By his brother, while his own people had yet rejected him. They were to wait for a long time until they would believe in Moses. So it was not with their support that Moses had confronted him, the Pharaoh. It was without any support that he had confronted him. So the truthful people do not have a worldly support at all, and yet they dare to confront a worldly power such as that of Pharaoh. And he not only looked at him with such disdain, as if he was an insect he could be trampled upon, he looked upon his people as well as such. Even if they had attempted to support him, what was their might, what was their position in the sight of Pharaoh? He says, shirzimatun qaliloon. What are they? Small, insignificant people daring to annoy us. The great emperor of Egypt. And then he says, these are the people whom we, permitted to survive. And we did this and that. And in what state? Hadhrat Moses answers that you are claiming that you bestowed a favor upon them by subjugating them to the worst type of slavery? And you think it's a favor? Now this was their total might. And yet we know that a majority from among them had not yet accepted Moses as a prophet of God. And they would dare not go with him to the court of Pharaoh in support of him. They kept to their own homes. Even when they had power, they behaved exactly in the same way. They said, اذهب أنت وربك فقاتلا فإنا هاهنا قاعدون. So the same mentality was displayed when they had the power. In the sight of Allah, they had the power to conquer the enemy. How could they support Moses at the time when they didn't even believe in him? This is one part of history. Look at Abraham, look at Jesus, look at Noah. Who were the people, worldly people, who were supporting them? None. And the enemy whom they had annoyed, or people whom they had annoyed to the degree of converting them into sworn enemies, were all powerful on earth around them. Now this is the uneven battle between a truthful person and a powerful, hostile opposition. Now in this state, the false people are supported and the truthful people are abandoned to their lot. And this is what the Holy Quran is pointing out. That you know what will happen when we try, if it were a false person, when and if we try to destroy him, you will be the people supporting him, because you never support the right people. You have the misfortune of always supporting the false people, and that is why I have sent this man to you. So try it, and nothing will help him if he is a false man. But if it's true, then you have to oppose him and go ahead and do it. We will not permit you to be successful. Now, I come to the last part of this discussion, which is relevant to the truth of Ahmadiyya. When Hadhrat Masih claimed to be from God, he was alone. And the first target of his campaign was Christianity. And it was the Christian empire, the mightiest empire the modern times have ever seen, of the British Empire, which used to boast that on that empire the sun never sets, all around the world. And he got up and confronted them and dared to attack Christianity to be a false religion with reference to the modern day or the Christianity of that time. His claim was, it was truth in the beginning. You have distorted it. It's no longer truth. You have become false. You have betrayed the message of Jesus Christ. This was a very great and daring attempt to fight the belief, faith of his own rulers and the kings and queens of the British Empire. And we know that at that time they were extremely ambitious in spreading the message of Christianity to all India, to all the people of India, so that by doing so they could give permanence to their presence in India. Because once people are converted to the faith of their rulers, then obviously they become, it changes their attitude and they become supporters of their political rule or domination as well. Now that was the state. So he couldn't get any help from Christians because it was the Christians fathers and leaders of the church who opposed him most. This is a history which everybody can read. Then about Hindus, the most powerful inhabitants of India, overwhelmingly larger in number than any other populace, were the Hindus. And he told them, you're wrong in believing Krishna to be a god. I am Krishna and I am not God. I am Krishna and I am a servant, humble servant of Muhammad Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So this is the best position your Krishna could acquire, to submit to the will of Muhammad Rasulullah and take pride in his being his servant. So in that sense he claimed to be the Krishna. How insulting they must have felt. The claim was that he not only claims to be Krishna, whom we consider to be a god, and he says no, he was not a god, but he reduces his position to such a state that he says, I am the right Krishna, and as such I find pride in being a most humble slave of Muhammad Rasulullah. This is the maximum your Krishna can achieve. And turning to Christians once again, he said, look here, you say he is the son of God. I say not only that, not only he was not a son of God, but I am Jesus reappeared, Jesus reborn. And I take pride in being the humblest of servants of Muhammad Rasulullah. This is the status of your so-called son of God. What a daring claim. The most powerful people of India were Hindus, most powerful rulers of India were the British, and then he continued to build his claim and even claimed to be the Guru which was promised by Guru Baba Nanak. The Sikhs were most powerful people around him. Even today, if you go to Qadian and see the Sikhs have the greatest power in Gujarat, in district Gurdaspur and all around Qadian, it was the Sikh rule. And at that time, they were also indisciplined and undisciplined people who were given up to violent acts if they were made angry. And still the Sikhs have that similar nature, but not to that degree. So you know what he said? He said, you think Guru Baba Nanak Sahib brought a new religion, introduced a new religion to the world? I claim and I prove that he was a Muslim and he was a believer in Hadhrat Muhammad and a believer in the Quran, and he practiced Islam. Imagine the annoyance which must have been displayed by the Sikhs around him. Even today they have been making attempts to to arouse the Sikh sentiment, to retaliate to this claim by persecuting Ahmadis, etc. At that time when he was just alone by himself, and when he claimed that Jesus was dead and he was in his name, and he was that prophet of God who was promised by Hadhrat Muhammad as Messiah to come, the Jesus to come. Imagine how he must have infuriated the mullahs, the Muslim clergy of that period. So much so that they exceeded all limits and went beyond all the remaining groups of people whom he had annoyed by such claims in their hostility towards him, and started issuing edicts and spreading them all over the world, that the life of this man is forfeit. Anybody can help himself. Go and kill him. Destroy him, and he will earn the favor of Allah. And he was one man, abandoned even by his own kith and kin. He said, this is the verse. test my truth on the touchstone of this wonderful Quran and get the message. Find out what does this touchstone declares. And it will declare that do whatever you may, because God is on my side, you cannot destroy me. Now the mullahs, they say, what sort of man he was? He claimed today this and claimed that day and that, and he said he's Muhammad, he says he's Messiah, he says he's Krishna, he says he's Buddha, he says this and that. How many persons he was? And Hadhrat Muhammad pointed out that how many persons was God? And then Hadhrat Rasulullah declared his unity, because they believed in God to be so many different things. He said, what sort of this jumbling together is? He has got different gods mixed up together and welded them together into one. So this is exactly the confused thinking of the people of that period, and still they follow the same attitude. They said, look here, he thinks that he has jumbled all these different people together from different religions and molded them into one. That is Mirza. We just mock at this view and we reject it. While what he said was, all the claims, all the prophecies relating to the reformers of latter days, you find in any religion, were to be fulfilled in the person of one servant of Hadhrat Muhammad Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, to prove beyond a shadow of doubt the status of Hadhrat Muhammad Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to be above and over all the prophets of God who ever appeared in the past, but who promised to reappear on a certain period of time, which is latter days. And this is the latter days. Here I am, representative of Krishna, representative of Buddha, representative of Confucius, representative of Jesus Christ, and I take pride in being the humblest of servants of Muhammad. But he was left alone. Where was the army supporting him? And he said, do whatever you may, you will not be able to destroy me, because God is with thee. Now, when he declared this, he also claimed that God has told him, I'll spread thy message to the corners of the earth. Now let us see, did this happen or did it not? When we claim this, we point to these realities of life, which they cannot deny. None of the hostile mullahs can ever change the facts which I have just related. They have to admit, these are the facts of history. You know where they take refuge? Very interesting. They take refuge in the fact they believe, it is a fact, that God wanted to destroy him, all right, but it was the British Empire which stood in the way of God and Mirza. You see, now I have built this up only to make the Arabs particularly understand why they so much, brag about Ahmadis being the British agents. Almost all Arabia has become British agents and American agents now, unfortunately for them, because of these falsehoods. They are in a way punished. But the question again remains that if their claim is right, then why should they worship God? They should worship the British Empire, which they are practically doing now. God says, Fama minkum Anhu hajizeena. Who would be there among you who would stand between me and him if I decide to punish him? And the Buddha said, no. British Empire, you see, very powerful. God couldn't do anything. Now that the British have left the country at last, now we will show you and prove to you and demonstrate to you that we can destroy him if God failed. He said God failed and we failed also because the British were too powerful for God and us together. No, even if God is not interested anymore after all, we are going to destroy him. And what is the result? Every time they make an effort to destroy Ahmadiyya, it grows from strength to strength and from country to country, and it's a fascinating phase of history we have entered now, where every year we are doubling up and unbelievable things are happening. And Arabs are turning now in larger number, much larger number than ever before, to Ahmadiyya. Because they said, we are going to destroy. Allah says, all right, try it. And that is why such panic. Abdullah Nasif, you know, he has taken into his head now that they have these insignificant small things. This is his statement issued in the paper. They dare to have a Muslim television, Ahmadiyya? We, the mighty people, the significant people who sit on the mountains of wealth, we have decided to launch a counter television, which would be the true Islamic television, and then we'll see where they stand. And now I make a prediction. Not directly because I have heard from God, but because I know the Quranic message. And this is the prediction, there is no other prediction. The Holy Quran says to Satan, when he made the claim to lead God's servants away, he said, do whatever is in your power. Bring your armies, bring your infantry, the mounted divisions, the royal horse you have. Do whatever you have. My servants will remain my servants, and you will have no power over them. So this is my answer. If you try to do it, you will see that you are defeated even more soundly and more roundly in the second round of our battle, because poor innocent Arabs do not know what we are, and when they will hear from their Muslim television what we are, and when they will compare those allegations with what they see on this television, their majority of people, honest, simple people, they will say, oh, look here, they were all lies. And this is the message which we receive daily almost from so many countries, so many people of the world. Even a Shia wrote to me this morning. Before I came, I had just finished his letter because I had kept it away because I was short of time. Just before coming to you, I read that letter, and he was a great Shia scholar. He said, all my life I was fed on these lies, which were concocted by mullahs against you, and I believe they're absolutely right, and I hated Ahmadis. Until one day I read the Quran, the particular verse in the Quran, that whenever a claimant comes to them, they say, we'll follow our forefathers. So are we not doing the same thing? You know, that was the question raised in my mind. And it disturbed me so much, I couldn't sleep peacefully. I said, let me investigate. He said, so I started investigating other sects of Shiaism first. That was my priority. And failed to find truth. Then I turned to Sunni sects, still I was not satisfied. Then one day I said, let me see what sort of people they are. They are supposed to be the worst enemies of Islam, but they claim to be Muslim. Let me go to their city and find out myself. He said, when I went to Rabwa, he said, I was amazed. He said, my imagination of how Muslims should be at the time of Hadhrat Muhammad was realized. I was wondering whether it was a dream or something real in real life. People were so honest, so humble, so truthful, so helpful to others, so generous. And the mosques were filled with worshippers 5 times a day. So he said, I stayed there quietly without asking any questions. But that created a turmoil in my heart and in my mind. And still I was afraid because I heard so much about the Ahmadis, not believing in so, not doing this and not doing that. So he said, I decided to return, but something caught hold of my feet. He said, look here, you have seen enough. Unless you proceed further and investigate into their beliefs, you will remain answerable to God. This will be one area which you had left out from your research. And that is what he explains to me. Then he says, I dared to go to a place. He said, the title or the placard shown there was La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. What sort of placard that is? They say they don't believe in that. And then it said there is a display of our 100 years achievements of Ahmadiyya. Come and see it. So I entered, I saw that and I was amazed at the services of the Ahmadiyya they had rendered. And he said, fortunately there were a few Ahmadiyya scholars sitting there. So I approached them very humbly and also in fear. Lest suddenly they burst up, into violence and they start beating me. And so I started first with small, mild questions. And the answers I received were amazing. And they were all, instead of trying to scare me, throughout they were apologetic and humble and courteous. But please go ahead, do whatever you like, ask other questions. He said, then I took out the strongest of my allegations, which I had read in the Mullah's books. Everything proved to be false. And although you may think I have done it more hastily than I should have, but I decided not to return to my home without accepting Ahmadiyya. Now from there, he returned to, it was a short visit to Pakistan. He's serving in a country in Arabia. So he said, I have returned to that part of the world now, but the more I read of Ahmadiyya now, the more I become happy and satisfied and contented, and I have decided to dedicate the remaining life, my remaining life, to the spread of message of Ahmadiyya, which so many people have never heard of. I mean, not in the right perspective, but in the wrong perspective, of course. So this is what I'm saying, that Ahmadiyya, with the grace of Allah, is nothing but Islam. But these people, when they tell lies with British agents and that agents and that agents, common man has no power to reason out. They don't know the Quranic teaching either. So it's a good instrument in our power with the grace of Allah. So I tell you, Brother Masih, whatever you do, go ahead. You have money, you have power, you have strength. But you are bound to fail, because you'll be confronting God, as 100 years of confrontation has already proved to you. You can't destroy Ahmadiyya. 100,000, a billion Nasifs cannot destroy Ahmadiyya because it is from God. For that?
No.
Yes, there was a point, but the people took the power in their hand to damage.
You see, here we have to dwell a bit longer on the same subject. What I continued to say in this regard was that the entire might of the British was in fact against Masih Maud Islam, because he had started a battle against their faith, in which they were interested to have established in the whole India. But even if we believe that these mullahs, that they were behind him, where was God? And if they were false, the scenario is a different scenario. Then God plus all the Muslims and all the Hindus and all others in India were on one side in destroying this false man. And the British were on the other, and God and these people failed, and the British succeeded. If that is true, I said, then why do you worship God? Start worshipping the British, and perhaps you do.
Yeah.
For all practical purposes, you have submitted to the superior will of the British and the Americans, politically at least, to go ahead and do it. But you must admit that God failed, and you failed, and all others failed, and the British won. But when the British left, then you said, all right, now we'll see. Now we will destroy. So that is the part of this speech.
I mentioned some of this,
Yes.
but okay.
Yes. When the British left, then they raised their heads. Now is the time for us and God to work. There's no British. And what did they do? Significant people, it's just small things. They have dared do it, but we know, we are powerful. He read, while reading the Quran, suddenly a verse caught his eye.
The same verse?
The same verse? No, not the verse which says that they say we'll follow our forefathers.
He was a scholar as well?
What?
He was a scholar?
Yes, he is. He's a big scholar. First he investigated all other sects and he was not interested. Having finished his journey, found no peace. Then he at last turned to this.
What kind of investigation?
The Shia, Sunni, different sects. He took very long time in studying all the different sects in Islam because he thought we were not a part of Islam. He was not interested. When they were exhausted and still did not find truth which he was looking for, then he said, all right, let me try here as well.